Good morning, everyone. Winter. It's nice to chat to everybody before the stream begins. Let's just pop up the chat window. So, on the thumbnail for today's live stream, there is Dragon Empress Barbie, which I don't know what that's all about, but it looks very D&D to me. So I guess that's the signpost that we were looking for. As soon as you've got a Barbie doll of something, it's got to be totally mainstream, right? So welcome to D&D mainstream. Here's your Barbie doll. Kind of scary. What else was I going to talk about? Oh yeah, the fall of Patreon. So for those of you who are not aware, and I've only just become aware of this over the last couple of days, live stream midweek because I missed the weekend live stream because I strained a back neck muscle thingy, you know, the bit that makes your head go back and forth. It was so bad actually that it messed up my right arm as well, so it was kind of painful. And in that particular case, you just drink fluids, don't move. Like a lot of people are saying, oh, you got to stretch it. It's like, no, you don't. On a strained muscle, you just stay still and let the muscle heal and let the swelling go down, and then you stretch it and make sure it's okay. Yeah. So those of you who are familiar with me will know that Patreon and I have never really gotten along very well. I think that they're run by a bunch of absolute morons, and this is really the proof of the pudding. Like Patreon decided to, every single time Patreon management touches something, they just burn it. Hey, thanks Nathaniel. Welcome to Gold Dragon. So what happened was there was a comedian on the platform and Patreon decided they didn't like what he was doing and they kicked him off the platform or something like that. And his fans had essentially paid to watch his shows and stuff, so they were denied a service. And that's illegal in the States. You can't get in between a creator and their audience as a third party. It's legal to do that. So, unless I guess you're like the government, federal government or something, I don't know. Anyway, so what happened is the fans then did a class action lawsuit and essentially countersued Patreon or something, and they won, which means that Patreon, who have got it in their terms and service agreement that everything has to go through arbitration with them, they were now liable for the cost of all that arbitration, which means that it's like $10,000 per person, and there's thousands of people, so it's millions of dollars. And a lot of the people on Patreon, the creators and stuff, are like, good, this is, you did this to yourself with your virtual signaling bullshit, and you should never have done this in the first place. You're just a platform. Get off your high horse, sort of thing. You're not like, nobody thinks that you're liable for the things that people produce on your platform. It's already got a paywall, so if you don't want to be exposed to something, then you just don't pay for it and you don't expose yourself to it. Anyway, that's my personal view, personally. Anyway, so this means that Patreon is now going to be facing a big bill, and long term, like, it's inconvenience for people on Patreon using the service at the moment, because we have a very real worry that Patreon is going to pass that cost on to us through fees and stuff, and their fees are already pretty high compared to other platforms that have popped up into the space since Patreon sort of invented the thing. Patreon's always been first because it was first. It's been the biggest because it was just the first one around, not because it's the best. In fact, their servers are always slow. The navigation is terrible. It's just generally quite poor. A lot of people use Ko-fi and Subscribestar and other platforms. So I have created a Subscribestar platform page on the platform Subscribestar, and I will be dual loading on both of those so that people on Patreon can make the transition over to Subscribestar if and when they feel like it. So they won't be missing out on anything while the two are in operation. But eventually, I will be closing down Patreon, just not anytime soon. We're talking months down the track. But I don't want to support Patreon anymore. I do think it's good for creative people in the industry as a whole, because this creates a really good legal precedent where we do have legal protection from platforms essentially deplatforming us and cancelling us. So that's really good. Yeah, Subscribestar. I got recommended Subscribe Star. It seems pretty good, but we'll see. What is that? Bible Black Law videos when? I have no idea what you're talking about, Corvo. Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to Subscribe Star. Patreon has been okay. Like, I can't complain. It really saved my ass from the fire. Like, I don't thank the platform. I thank the people who supported me on the platform. So you guys really hauled my ass out of the fire when I got my channel got demonetized when I first went full time for no reason. I don't know. I still don't know why that happened. So I'll always be eternally grateful to everybody there. And I realize that people are not going to make the transition because, why I don't follow people around the internet as creators myself, so I don't expect other people to do so. And also with the looming prospect of a global economic downturn for everybody with the COVID-19 thing, I totally understand if a lot of people can't spare any cash to support creators personally. I'm doing okay on YouTube. The advertising revenue hasn't dipped too much. It has certainly taken a hit because companies are saving pennies and pulling out. But a lot of them have realized that advertising is more important now than ever before because they need to drum up any business they can, particularly online. I know. I don't know. Well, this is the thing, Mr. L. I don't know what their motivations are. I don't know what they're going to be upset about next. It wasn't a level playing field. They targeted people and deplatformed them outside of policy, and that's the main thing. There was no protection for people from the platforms doing that. So essentially, cancel culture would, I think with this comedian or some other people like Sargon of Akkad didn't even do anything on Patreon to break any of their rules, but he said something else on Twitter or something like that, and then they cancelled him due to his activities elsewhere. So it's that kind of bullshit, which means that, they just had to go. Jeez, everybody. YouTube membership takes a big chunk, but it's good because it relieves some of the burden of advertising revenue from the platform. I wish everybody would subscribe to YouTube, pay the premium price like Netflix, and that way they wouldn't have to use advertising. I'd just get a steady stream of income from people just watching my videos. That also provides me a means of communicating and providing extra content for people, but it has to go through YouTube, which is the thing. It's okay. It just means I would have to have the problem with making videos about Dungeons and Dragons is I'd have to do other content instead of Dungeons and Dragons content to make exclusive content for people behind a paywall, because I can't put any D&D stuff behind a paywall. It has to be freely available to everyone who wants to watch it. Thanks, Jonathan. Ribeye and rosemary, Asiago, Mediterranean cheese with a glass of bourbon. Nice combo. That's a manly meal. Yeah, me too, Morgan. I have trouble trusting Californian companies. Bible Black is an inappropriate anime. It'd have to be with a name like that, wouldn't it? I wonder if it's anything like the Has-Been Hotel. Man, that was really great. Hi, Mr. Sai. I'm doing great, thank you. On the mend, I'm about 80% fixed now. They are not minor adult themes. Morgan, I don't drink wine, unfortunately, unless it's homebrewed. I can't have any sulfites, any of the preservative stuff clarifying agents that they put in wine. It gives me an immediate and serious headache, so I don't drink it. It is absolutely not like Has-Been Hotel. Oh, okay. Oh, thank you, Johan. More state bashing? Oh, they're just talking about California companies, not California. It's talking about Silicon Valley, essentially. And in the case of, like, Patreon, like, have you ever seen the behind the scenes of Patreon, like their company culture and stuff? A lot of form over substance, so to speak. Well, like, I wouldn't say, yeah, I mean, I kind of am grateful that chorizo sausage. I'm kind of grateful that the state governments, like, and national governments are sort of lagging a little bit behind on the internet and its laws and things, because they shouldn't really have a hand in human communication in the first place when you think about it. Yeah, so headache is an intolerance to sulfites. It's so extreme that wine actually tastes completely different to me. Like, you would tell me that it's got nutty overtones and things like that, and I would taste it, and it tastes like vinegar with a side order of headache. That's what it tastes like. It all tastes the same. Very tart, acidic, tannin taste to it. Doesn't taste like grapes at all. Florida Man. I think there is a stat block of Florida Man somewhere. This is a very mild chorizo sausage. It's got a little bit of chili, but not much. I'm having a bit of chili at the moment to up my circulation, which helps with the back. Where do I get all the lore, Zardak? Essentially, I have a big load of books behind me. I have a lot of online resources that I plumb through. Thanks to working for Wizards of the Coast in the past, I get access to all the D&D Beyond books. As soon as they get released, I get to read and go through them. I've got a lot of archived Dungeons and Dragons magazines. There's also several Wikipedia. I'm extremely good. Like, I'm basically a warlock of Google. I've signed a pact with Google, and now I just do wondrous things with my fingers on the keyboard, and I can find anything pretty much instantly. So, you know, I have cantrips like find out your cat's name, things like that. What are my thoughts on goblins being pressed into service for Verbeeg nosehair trimming duty? I have expressed my opinion in the comment section, and this is just my opinion, but I think because Verbeegs have a hair loss sort of problem, they got sparse hair compared to other giants, they would take pride in any hair that they have. So they would take great pride in their great plumes of nostril and ear hair. And they would grow hair in all sorts of weird places. Like they would plait their knuckle hair, for instance. What do I think of the scroll of Summon Tarask? I think it's possible. I think it's been poorly conceived in relation to the rest of the lore. Like the Illithariad, which was Bruce Cordell's work on the Illithids, talks about a planet of Tarasks, I think. Or it might be a Spelljammer thing. But there's a planet that Tarasks come from. So it's like the Tarask on Toril is a displaced creature from another dimension. That's why there's only one. What would a fortified city like D&D, a normal city, would not stop magic users and beasts, but flying creatures and magic? Yeah, so, like, good question, Esther. Particularly in the Forgotten Realms in 5th edition, bounded accuracy means that armor classes are not completely out of reach of low-level creatures, and town guards and things like that with their pikes and shields and things can whittle down an adult red dragon in a matter of 10 rounds of concerted action. If you do the statistics and figure out what the average hit rate per group of creatures is, a large group of creatures can whittle down a high-level party or a high-level foe pretty quickly, so they're not out of reach. factor in that the dragon is only going to take out so many people with its breath weapon and things like that. It's basically a matter of mob reduction. Old school question is named Sigil, pronounced Seagull or Sigil? Sigil. Seagull, like seagull. Like the bird. Seagull. Yeah, it's an in-joke. Sigil, of course, is a magical glyph. A sigil. But that's not what the city is pronounced like. That being said, some D&D authors will tell you that you can pronounce it however you like. You can pronounce it drow or dro. Personally, I think dro sounds like somebody scraping their fingers on a blackboard, but I defend your right to say it that way because some authors have said it that way. JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, I might do. Thanks, Moodring. I have added a couple of things to my list of to-do. Zygodax is one of them. I've still got to do a video on Dendarth, Zastam, Tyranthraxis, Pool of Radiance, Hellfire Worm, Sardior, Spellgaunts, Talisman of Good and Talismans of Evil, and of course the Zygodax from Dragon 267 just got added this morning. Also the Inquisitor Undead, Changelings, Mercane City of Union, Draconic Sorcerers and Dragon Mages, Brood Swarms, Undead Vegetables, Rukarazil, Juragomo, Fiend Worms, Zakels, the Hekon, the 100-handed. Yeah, lots of things to do. Thanks, Malfazar. Howdy, AJ. Have a mead on me. Just finished my Viking Blood cherry mead before bottling. So good. Nice. Yeah, I've got one which is in my wardrobe on the final stages of brewing at the moment. It's been brewing, actively bubbling away for well over 12, 13 days or so. I'm going to give it like another week to settle, and then I'm going to put it in I'm going to decant it off into a refining barrel. Do I know of any Minecraft D&D crossovers? My good buddy Red NZ Blue, if you go and check out his channel on YouTube, he's got a video on that very thing, Minecraftia as a D&D realm. So I would recommend going and watching that video right now. The weather is crisp and cool, thanks, James. Oh, the cheese is just a brie. Just a standard brie. In America, our national alignment is lawful evil. I'm proud of that. Why not? Why not, man? If you're going to be a superpower, be a superpower. Yeah, I figure, why not undead vegetables, right? It's a living thing. It can be raised from the dead. In your mind, the Tarrasque is a protector of the planet, only getting involved in worldwide threats get out of hand, in a way similar to Godzilla. You could play it that way, Jimmy, sure. No, I'm not going to go back and I'll play... No, I'm not playing the old Pool of Radiance game for research. Thanks for the suggestion, Matt, but no, that would be painful. I've actually finally made the leap and got myself a PlayStation 4. I know the PlayStation 5 is just coming out. Bear with me. I'm an old adopter. I'm a last adopter, so I go in and I find the things which are tried and true and nobody's complained about the entire time that they've been around. So I get the games from the bargain bin, when they're at $20 when originally they were $120. So now I've got a PlayStation, I've got a VR headset, I've got a big TV, and I'm enjoying, various titles. And it couldn't have come at a better time when I was holed up with a sore back. Hey, Mr. Joshua. Any plans for a bit of Blackmore? Maybe folded in with Dave Arneson discussions. I'm a big fan of Dave Arneson and his think tank of D&D creators, essentially, wargamers who created the Dungeons and Dragons experience. Blackmoor got folded into Greyhawk, obviously. And yeah, I'd like to talk more about Greyhawk. Because there's certainly a lot of people who are playing it, and I'd like to see a lot more new players of the game get into Greyhawk and understand where it's coming from. Thanks, Lysander. Are you familiar with the initiate of the Sevenfold Veil class from 3.5 edition, and do you think it could be ported to 5th edition? How would you do it? No, I'm not familiar with that one, but I think, yeah, it could easily be ported over to 5th edition. I'm currently involved as a consultant and a little bit of writing, a tiny bit about sled dogs and stuff and equipment, in a supplement which is produced by Faerun and a bunch of really good writers, which will be coming out probably around September-ish, which is a player's companion for the Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Queen. Rime of the Frost Queen? Yeah, that adventure. And watching them work to introduce concepts and things like that, and character class options, and different like bard schools and barbarians and druid circles and things like that. Yeah, you can port almost anything over the 5th edition. It's a platform that is really well suited to slotting in new ideas and concepts and updating from previous editions. So yeah, there's no barriers whatsoever from to bringing something from older editions over to 5th edition for sure. Thanks, Epic Tulu. Love your vids. Gem dragons tied to the primal psychic force, reds and fire, and I'm curious if half gem dragons would be similar to the shard mines. I don't entirely know. Like the shard mines lore from 4th edition is that they were part of essentially god stuff. That crystal was a crystalline entity, a body of a god that was like a barrier dimensional plug between the far realm and reality, that housed an internal created race called the Quam. So it was very complicated, and the Shardmind are like divine sparks infused into the stuff of their bodies, so they're like a collective intelligence that comes out of these shards of crystal that could lend itself to some sort of a process after a gem dragon dies, where essentially a golem is created from the remnants of their physical body, and it has a life force similar to a Warforged. That would be totally okay with me. That makes sense according to the lore, right? Because dragons have this sort of infusion of elemental power. Even though gem dragons are more sort of psychic, they're still dragons. So, yep, I see nothing wrong with that. And being tied into some sort of primal psychic force, that's tainted by the far realm, kind of like D&D borrowed a little bit of Warhammer 40k, much like Warhammer 40k borrowed a lot from Dungeons & Dragons. There's a little bit of bleed over between the two franchises, and you could say that the far realm is kind of like the warp space, psychic warp space. I like that idea too. Thanks to Wall. I'm getting this, Dark Strider. DeWall, vampire roses, extra long thorns absorbs the blood that falls on them because of extra long thorns. Only blooms at night, but are very pretty. Well, of course they'd be pretty. They'd be charming. You get closer and closer. You'd be compelled to stick your nose deep into the bush and take a long slog of those intoxicating perfume of those flowers that have a touch of remorse and desperate need. Meanwhile, a razor-thin sliver of thorn will go into your jugular vein and... Yep, I see nothing wrong with that. Bit of Ravenloft lore, maybe. The humanoids, dragons. Dragons in humanoid form. All dragons have found ways of turning into humanoids, chromatic dragons included. They use spells to do it. It's polymorph and things like that. Works for dragons perfectly fine. Dragons don't like... there's a few dragons which like staying in humanoid form, most notably the were dragons or the steel dragons. But most dragons prefer to relax and be in dragon form. It's their natural state of being, and that's how they enjoy their meals. And it's just, being a dragon is cool. You can fly and stuff, and they can breathe water and things, and they can exercise their strength and power. Being stuck in humanoid form is unpleasant. It'd be like turning yourself into a caterpillar, you know, if you wanted to. But they interact for sure, and I've sort of hinted at the fact that there's doppelgangers and shapeshifters who have a substrata of society. They've got a secret society within society, so they're like a parasite species which existing inside civilization. So in any population or city, you've got these shapeshifters who are doing their thing. And of course, dragons count as shapeshifters in that regard. They can masquerade as humans, or elves, or dwarves, and move around inside those societies and manipulate events. Given their longevity and the wealth that they have access to, they can move and shake factors across civilizations very, very well. Not only that, but they're their own transport system. So the advantage they have in trade and commerce over ordinary humanoids cannot be underestimated. So a dragon can move resources from one place to another over vast distances, and nobody would be the wiser. Apart from the Harpers and various other groups like Lord's Alliance and things, the Harpers in particular travel very far and wide. I'm reading the Code of the Harpers at the moment. Thanks, Aidan. Question. Stars in D&D are just normally a portal to the Plane of Radiance. So are Far Realm infected stars just portal to the Far Realm? Tricky. Like, okay, so that conflicts totally with the idea of a crystal sphere being around the entire star system. So in Spelljammer, the crystal sphere essentially has painted on stars, or in the case of the Forgotten Realms, it's these massive big statues of former deities or something like that. It's very mysterious, who have these essentially carrying big braziers which are burning with these eternal firelights, which is the stars that people see down on the worlds down below. In other cases, it's different. It could be like huge entities that look like fireflies that are sort of crawling around on the surface, and so on. In the case of 4th edition, with the concept of these dark star entities, it's totally different. They could be psychic things that you're looking at impinging on your perspective at nighttime from some other space. It's really up to you, depending on what you'll want your cosmology to be like. They could be entities that are actually floating freely in wild space and form navigational terrors for people who are traveling from planet to planet inside the sphere. It's up to you. Chevalier Blade, thank you. Oh, potential stupid question, but I've never seen anything about it. Can dragons breed outside their kind, like green and blue or silver and gold, mixed metallic, could make alloy dragons? Yes, they can. So with dragons, and I can't stress this enough, forget about the normal constraints of biology and DNA, right? So dragons are elemental beings as much as they are physical flesh and blood beings. So they're infused with elemental power. That's why in heroic stories and things like that, just bathing in dragon blood can give you dragon qualities. So if it can transform a living being into a hybrid, it can certainly transform somebody's offspring into a hybrid form as well. And that's the reason why it is like an energy which will be present in a bloodline of people, which isn't genetic per se, but it's like a taint which may manifest itself later on. We have sorcerers who are born because they had previous exposure to draconic energy. That doesn't necessarily mean that a half-dragon is the result of a dragon taking on humanoid form through polymorphing and interbreeding with a person in the traditional way. They can literally be a dragon and a person who fall in love, and there's an exchange of energies that has nothing to do with biological processes. Same thing with the different dragon varieties. They're not breeds per se. They're different energy strata, you could say. Like it's a gradient of different elemental power. So you do have hybrids. In D&D lore, the metallic dragon hybrids are way more random in the offspring that they have than the chromatics. The chromatics actually do just make, like a purple dragon could be the result of a green, of a blue and a red dragon, they result in a purple dragon. Purple dragons are also, to add the confusion, a distinct race of dragons in and of themselves. They're the deep dragons who are sort of psychic and weird. But yeah, there's both. Thanks, Kastuke. Nose into the bush. Now. How do Verbeegs view humans? Humans have always been around for the Verbeegs. Verbeegs may actually have come to the world at a similar sort of time, but humans have always kind of been present on Toril. They're one of the original races. And so they would see them have evolved from a primitive sort of state to being now quite uppity and taking over the world sort of thing. The more important question would be, how do Verbeegs view elves? They probably hate elves with passion because of what elves have done to the planet in the past that have disrupted Verbeeg plans greatly. But on the other hand, the elves also vanquished the dragons, which is something, for a very, very long time. So, I don't know. I haven't run an adventure based in the Endless Maze, Mister, but I have seen like a dungeon world adventure. Do lizard folk use body parts from their own tribesmen to make weapons or armor? I don't think so. I do know that they eat their dead. But they don't. I don't think they use bits of their body. They are highly practical, though. So they might use teeth of the dead in their weapons and things like that. They may possibly. They're very practical. Like if there's nothing as good as a tooth around for sharpness and durability, then they'll certainly use a tooth. Thanks, Kikastu. Glad to hear you're doing better. Just had my first COVID scare wake up a couple of days ago with a 101.5 degree fever, full body aches, slept for nearly 24 hours straight, but the test showed negative. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this. Yeah, that's scary, man. I'm glad you're okay. Whew. I think there's Dragonlord and various others. Those of you who I'm still waiting on, let's see, Nicholas Borick, Deathless, and Wintersweed. I'm still waiting on your address details so I can send you your reward. Can Verbeeg and humans breed? Jury's out on that one. I haven't seen any instances in the lore, and I would be inclined to say, nah, doesn't really need to happen, does it? What's up with false hydras? I don't know. They're cool. Warlock and Load. That's a good name. I'm running a campaign and the party is headed north to meet a wizarding compound. Would it make sense for an ancient silver dragon to become the headmaster of a secluded wizarding school? Yeah, why not? This is not the greatest song in the world. This is just a tribute. Have I ever looked at the German Dark Eye rule set? Not yet. Man, I'm glad you're okay, Kick-Ass Duke. That would suck. Hey, Gail. It only seems like humans bang every race out there, but really it's just, writers doing things. Everybody wants an interesting, compelling villain or character. And like 3.5 edition and Savage Species really opened the floodgates. I think part of the problem with D&D's attitude towards races and stuff is that whole, you can have hybrids of different things. So like there should never have been half orcs, really, when you think about it. They're from different planets. They're from totally different planets. It's like if I decided to go out and make it like a half human, half octopus. It's just not going to happen. Not without, a wizard getting involved. In which case they're gene splicing and stuff like that. What's my favourite third-party rules for 5th edition? It would have to be... I wouldn't exactly call it third-party rules, but the Net Librum of Random Magical Effects version 2.0 by Oryx is possibly the best D&D supplement that's not a supplement that you will ever find. It is 1,000 weird things that can possibly happen. Like, next puddle stepped in by a caster turns to blood. Let's see. Target realizes that he's lost and doesn't know anyone nearby. Target's weapon vanishes when he dies. Where does it go? Who knows? All within 50 yards are ravenously hungry. Target's point is sealed in a 10-foot globe of force. So it's just, 10,000 different effects. It's fantastic. I use that every chance I get. Thanks, Jibby. Can we get a rant on the inconsistencies of the lore? I'd love to hear it. Okay. There's D&D lore is essentially a collection of 40 years worth of literature. It's a lot of fun to delve back through that, and I think it's one of the joys of the game, and particularly with Forgotten Realms, it's one of the joys of the game that you can delve back through the timeline and the history. You can run a perfectly good time travel game in Forgotten Realms because these previous areas of history have been so well described, which allows you to jump around and do that. You can do that to a lesser extent with like Eberron and other things, but it doesn't have that same sort of feel to it. Like Eberron's got a prehistory which is more mythology than it is sort of factual and stuff. Like if you went back to the era where the main continent was controlled by hobgoblins and goblinoids, that'd be cool. Or the era when the entire planet was essentially almost sucked into the abyss, that would be cool. Anyway, with the addition of the invention of 4th edition, you got a bunch of new creators who, for a new company, who were taking the reins of D&D and taking it a radical new direction. And these were a bunch of people who essentially were home brewers. I don't know if they really ever ran any sort of established setting themselves. Who knows? But they decided to really shake things up, and they invented a new world, Narath, and that was fine. And they had Dragonborn and Tiefling empires and this Points of Light campaign and a different set of like Pantheon sort of stuff. And the problem is that there was a lot of blending and blurring and mixing and matching of stuff, and in the Forgotten Realms, a lot of stuff got really badly shaken up with. They just sort of decided to make these arbitrary leaps 100 years forward in the timeline of the world, and all the authors essentially had to scramble and keep up. And it was kind of heartbreaking because things had been progressing along with living campaigns, and authors were like sort of taking care of their characters and progressing things along at a sort of regular sort of pace, and you could get your characters involved in world-shaking events and stuff that were echoed in novels and books and video games and stuff that were coming out. And then the main gaming company just decides to yank it through 100 years, and everybody's scrambling to keep up. Case in point in 5th edition, where it's been yanked 100 years into the future again, and like I'm at the moment, I'm just trying to scrabble to get all the various resources from third-party authors, which are updating different regions of the realms, and I'm colouring in little bits of the map to show which bits are up to date and which bits need to be explored. Like we've got the Moonshay Isles, and of course the Sword Coast has been well covered. We're getting a little bit of update for Icewind Dale, but that hasn't really been updated since D&D Next came around. We've got the Narfell and Impultur and the Great Dale, and a little bit of Reshiman and stuff have been updated. We've got some idea of what's going on in Thay. The Sea of Fallen Stars is sort of refilling thanks to all the waterfall and stuff. Ed Greenwood's done a really good job of updating what's going on in Cormyr and Sembia. Kalimshan is largely a mystery. We've got the Border Kingdoms, which is probably going to cover a lot of that region as well. Chult is okay. We know about that, but we don't really know anything about the southern coast. We don't know anything that's going on in Karatua. We don't know anything that's going on in Turmesh. You know, it's piecemeal, and it's been years that 5th edition has been around, so it's kind of frustrating. As for monsters and things like that, oh, don't get me started. Phoenixes, just wrong. Thanks, Melfazar. How would you polymorph a silver dragon newborn, by her dragon parents to hide her into a halfling without her knowledge? Mind blank poly. Why would they do that? Why would they mind blank their offspring? Dragons are born with the ability to speak and read and write and stuff. They're born far more capable than a humanoid. So they could just explain to the offspring that you need to hide in this halfling form for a while. And they might assist it with a boost of elemental energy or dragon magic. So they don't necessarily need to rely on human magic to do things. Also, a lot of human magic is relatively new to the dragons. So they've had difficulty over the last few thousand years in having any sort of coherent communication between each other, because first of all they need to isolate each other because of the dragon rage, and second, well, they're just dragons and they don't have a lot of respect for these newfound weird spells and stuff that the humans came up with from Netheril. So a lot of spells have been lost, and a lot of spells brand new to dragons. Justice for Drambrath! Justice for Drambrath! Yeah, Drambrath is interesting. Helruer has got a little bit of an update, I think. But Helruer's always been pretty isolated and protects itself with magic. Planet of the Goblins. This week, so we come out with a Verbeeg video. I'm trying to get started on my Grand Tour of the Realms, which is why I'm pushing for this effort of finding all the updated information. Yeah. And probably some more undead and stuff as well. You never know. I do what I want. Yeah, that's probably why. Like, a lot of the authors just went, ugh, you know, I'm just going to make something else. Sounds like something the Dragon propaganda machine would say. I mean, if you're very passionate about Drambrath, now is a perfect time to do an updated third-party book about the place, for sure. What's going on in the Forest of Amtar? What's going on in Lurewood, Lurin, Eastern Shah, Estegund? What's my favourite D&D city? Probably Candlekeep. Candlekeep isn't really a city, but it's a city if you're in there. I both would love to and kind of hate to go to Kalimshan, but I think Cormyr would be the most comfortable for me personally. Like, Cormyr would fit my sensibilities quite well, I think. Other places would be very, very tricky. And of course, I don't speak Common. That's the problem. If I went over to the world there, I don't speak any of the languages. So I'd have to be like, oh, I need a spell to I can talk to you. You know. Yeah. What's going on with the Corinthi? I don't know. We'll have to see. Mithranor? Mm-hmm. Silvery Moon would be cool. I don't know if I'd get on particularly well with elves, though, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if I'd yeah, it'd be tricky. I'd love to meet an elf. That'd be fun. Hey, are banshees considered undead or fae? They're undead. They're undead fae. Well, they're undead elves in our current edition, but they've always been undead, I think. There may be fae creatures which are called banshees, but on the mortal world, they're undead. What's a good end-game goal for an evil emperor that isn't world domination? Well, total hedonism is one thing. So they basically retire to a harem and rule everything by proxy, just by messages sent to them. So they don't have to deal with anything. So they just lock themselves away with their vices and pleasures, where they become squalid and decadent. That's probably one thing. One of the things I really like about the Harpers as an organisation is they always fight against things becoming too big for their britches. So when like if they had their way, Kalimshan and Tether and Arm and all those different places would actually shrink down a little bit more and split up into smaller little duchies and kingdoms and things, where they didn't have where the leaders basically had enough on their plate so that they didn't look to their neighbours with covetous eyes to steal their things. Because in that, ordinary people suffer when lords get greedy. Yeah, Evening Star in Cormier sounds lovely. Just, I mean, they've got winged cats. Come on, winged cats, people. You'd hate elves, but you're better than me anyway. Yeah, I think they'd get really like upset that I know so much about Forgotten Realms history. They'd be like, "Who are you?" As soon as they learned how to talk to me, I'd be like, "Blah blah 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 blah." They're like, "How do you know the names of dragons across the different continents?" I'd probably very quickly have a conversation with Elminster. He'd be like, "Who be ye?" From Earth. Ah. One of my players wanted to be a silver dragon. I said no, so it would be a surprise when she finds out she's one. Yeah. I've seen that sort of campaign before. The best evil is the evil that thinks it's good. Yeah. Certainly makes for a very compelling character. You gotta look at things from the evil person's point of view. Like, most evil people don't think they're evil. One of the things they do is they ignore their misdeeds and they try and avoid being confronted by them. I mean, it really comes down to psychology, and I think one of the big handicaps that people have is that they anthropomorphize everything. So they turn everything into a human perspective. They ignore the fact that, like, Oni, for instance, are monsters that eat children. They because they think of intelligence, and they think, oh well, intelligent things must think like I do. It's like, no, they don't. Not in Forgotten Realms. Dragons are large magical lizards. They don't think like humans do. They may have very similar traits, but that's not to say that they see things the same way that people do. They literally see the world in a different way, in a different light, like different spectrum. Beholders have a totally different mindset to humans, and they're highly intelligent. Aboleths, formidably intelligent, and yet they see the surface world as a blight, like a disease, a rash upon a world which would be best under the cleansing waters of the sea. And they don't like the sun, for instance. They wish the world was once again locked underneath endless ice, and they were inside an ocean that they controlled utterly. Yeah, knowing all the meta knowledge would just freak people out. They would literally think you were a dragon. Elves in the realm have a bit of a checkered past. A bit of a checkered past. Anthropomorphize. Thank you. Maybe wait for the game to come out before trashing it. Yeah, who knows? I'm looking forward to, like, video games have always got, they're railroaded, obviously, because, you know, like a choose your own adventure book, they've only got so many pages and so many paths that you can follow. They can't program everything. So obviously there's going to be an adventure path and a story that the video games are going to go through. I'm looking forward to them. I'm just looking forward to walking around in the world of D&D by proxy again. Yeah, it's been a while since we've had some decent D&D type games. D&D Online has been pretty cool, though. Thanks, Jimmy. If you went to Faerun, Vector would kill you for yeah. Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, I'd be a Nothic in no time. Be like, who is this person? I don't know, but he's transforming into something ugly. We should probably throw him into the trash. Right, yeah, I mean, people from off-world can travel to the Forgotten Realms. There's portals and things all over the place. There was an issue of Dragon magazine about evil characters who don't see themselves as evil. One was an emancipated vampire who wanted to turn people to save them from a pandemic. Wow, that's a great plot line. That's a great motivation for a vampiric character to have. Hey, Pale Rider. The stream's almost over, actually, dude. Just convert to Wee Jazz. Yeah. People always ask me where would I go in Forgotten Realms. They never ask me where I'd go in Cormier or Greyhawk or Krynn or any of those other planets. It's very telling. It's very telling. Nobody ever asked me where I'd go in Mystara. Is it just because they know more about the Forgotten Realms and me being a fan of the Forgotten Realms, or is it that this world is more real to them than the other ones? That's the question. That's how I made Orc morality for D&D. They view violence as the highest form of moral virtue. Anything that is not violent is thought by them to be a vice. They think invading helps you. Same Riser, that's an interesting perspective. Like, if you live in an environment where resources are very scarce, which they are in the frozen far north, which is what the main homeland of the orcs in the Forgotten Realms, well, particularly the grey orcs or the savage mountain orcs, or the pig-nosed orcs as we refer to them. The orcs on the cover of the Drist books, those are the mountain orcs. The Thayan orcs look quite different. They come from a resource-starved part of the world, and they are instructed by their gods to breed indiscriminately, which they do. They breed all the time, and there's not much else to do. Anyway, they're blessed with fecundity, and they have a population problem that grows every 30 years or so. They have this fresh batch of warriors whose only who believe that their position in society is based on their abilities as warriors. This is reflected if you go back to the original American culture of in the tribe. You'd count coup by going and taking a feather off an enemy, or taking scalps and things like that. It's not an unknown sort of attitude, and it's not it's nothing that I don't think it's problematic per se. It's a survival tactic. It's a part of training and things like that. It's a necessary evil, you could say, to be a skilled warrior and defend yourself and your tribe against rampaging monsters through the realms when they generally don't have a lot of magic at their disposal and things like that, and they don't have an armed organized militia because they're essentially sort of not a militia per se. But anyway, this whole idea that savagery is necessarily bad in D&D, or it's some sort of allegory for something which is going on in the real world, is just crazy. I think we all sort of recognise that there's a certain amount of that's just bullshit. You're ignorant. You don't really understand orcs going on, which is, where would I want to live on Rift's Earth? Chi-Town, for sure. I would stay in Chi-Town all the time. Are there any other gods of knowledge that would stop Vecna's censorship crusade? I don't know. Because, as we've discovered, Vecna did nothing wrong. He's got a very good reason for doing what he's doing, which is protecting the integrity of the multiverse. So, yeah. Where would I go on in Eberron? Shan. City of Towers. Sounds awesome. I'd love to go to Shan. I'm more of a city guy, really, honestly, I think. I like the mod cons. Chosen of Savaris. Strahd did nothing wrong. Greyhawk. I'd like to check out the city of Greyhawk. That'd be cool. Never leave Chi-Town. Yeah. I'm not saying Vecna is a good guy. I'm saying that he's a necessary evil. Ogma? Yeah, maybe. Find an Imascari portal to Earth and continually buying Safe Harbor and Sanctuary in Candlekeep. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, the creators of New Battlestar Galactica and Caprica had a neat one. I really didn't enjoy Caprica, did you? Battlestar Galactica was okay. Had a terrible ending, but the actual series was pretty good. Boy, they screwed the pooch on that one. Caprica was just sort of... yeah. But I quite liked, the birth of AI sort of story. Yeah. Autocorrect is always changing the spelling of Vecna. It's proof of his existence. What destroyed the city of San Anan? I don't know. Wormwood? You would willingly go to Wormwood. Ugh. Think of the diet, man. Ugh. No, I'm quite familiar with Wormwood, and no, I would definitely not go there. Was that a test to see if I'd be freaked out by going to Wormwood? Ugh. I did like the Apox and stuff. That was pretty cool. Sigil or City of Brass? Sigil all day. The weather's kind of sucky, but, I don't want to get eaten by a demon. I suppose you could get eaten by a demon in Sigil as well. Nah. Sigil's alright, just don't go anywhere near the vines. Caprica was a soap opera. They should just, I didn't like it. Tharizdun is the ultimate brain in a jar. Agree. Coalition did nothing wrong. Hey, if you choose to watch the videos on Tharizdun and Astral Dreadnoughts, then, you've taken the pill. Yeah, the Darbus are pretty weird. I'm not going to lie. Darbus would freak me out. But, yeah, genies though. Ifrit? No, I wouldn't want to deal with Ifrit. To them, you're just like a squeaky, combustible play toy. You're like automatically a slave in the eyes of an Ifriti. There's a Netlibrum dice roller. Ooh, thank you, Kakastuk. That's going to go in the community chat. Outside the epic dragons, what type of dragon would I most want to be, and which one would you never want to fight? Probably never want to fight a yellow dragon, because that sodium breath is no joke. Also, getting covered in liquid amber would suck. Probably a blue dragon, actually. Blue dragons seem alright. I do have an affinity for electricity. It can't be denied. Something about my nervous system and electricity that just seems to blend together quite well. Crystal dragons, yep. Jungle heat sucks. Do you know another name for the Shadow Dark? Shadow Dark? What? Yeah, there's no instances of male song dragons as far as I know. Or steel dragon. Song dragon? Song dragon. You'd like to bro down with a silver dragon. But what if you were that kind of slave? Yeah, I guess so. I'm an Afridi simp. Yes, master. Yeah, I think the idea of the Fade, the Underdark, having a connection, like in places of utter darkness, you have this link to the Shadowfell, and the Shadowfell has its own Underdark, which is actually leads to portals to the plane of negative energy. So it gets like really dangerous to go into the shadows. And in the Feywild, you have a Feydark, which is where the Fomorians and stuff like the subterranean kingdoms. Think essentially Fraggle Rock, right? So in Fraggle, if those of you who are familiar with Fraggle Rock, you've got a house which is built on a rock which contains a Fey realm, which has a portal to another Fey realm where these giants live, and they've got a magical trash heap, and it's the craziest thing. And the Fraggles live in perfect harmony with these little creatures called the Dozers. So it's hilarious. It makes a perfect weird sort of supernatural mini Fey realm within a realm sort of thing. Like you could have pockets of Fey realm. It's not all necessarily the same thing. Like, do the giants from Fraggle Rock, is that the actual Fey realm that they live in? Is that the Feywild that they live in? Is the Fraggle Rock a portal zone between, like a bridging zone between two different realms? That's what I want to know. Will you donate to the Ifrit when he plays Dragon Chess on Twitch? It's one of the Scrying Orb channels. They don't live in harmony with the Dozers. They eat their buildings and put them in incredible danger on a whim. No, I mean, biologically, it's a where do the Dozers get all their energy and stuff from to make those little bars of sugar? Do they consume Fraggle poop? I think they do. They always sound a little bit choked up, if you know what I mean. We never see what Dozers eat. Worries for another day. Let the music play down in Fraggle Rock. The great Dozer controversy of 2020. Let's rewrite history. Yeah, the Dozers live to build, right? So they're constantly frustrated at the Fraggles eating their buildings, and yet, it's a new construction project. I love the Dozers. The Dozers are awesome. Little hard hats. Darkwing Duck. I never got into Darkwing Duck, unfortunately. I guess that was just, I was a little bit too old to enjoy it. So places where you have portals to the plane of positive energy would be like the sun. And the sun of the Forgotten Realms is a created object. It was created by the gods to replace an original sun which got eaten by Dendar, the world serpent, or the shadow serpent, or the dream serpent. Dendar is one of those primordial snake gods, serpent gods, that you do not want to mess with. At best, you can just sort of hope that he sleeps for a very long time. Yeah, Darkwing Duck just didn't really appeal. I never really liked Donald Duck or Scrooge McDuck either. I guess it's just a fundamental cultural thing where I don't like people who lose their temper. And that never really appealed to me with Donald Duck, because it just didn't have any parallel with my life or my family or my culture. People who get mad at Smash stuff, like, I don't do that. My family doesn't do that. Nobody in my family gets frustrated and then breaks at something. We just don't. We don't see that as normal. We would never like get angry and throw a plate of food or smash something, or, you know, just doesn't happen. We get frustrated, we throw our hands up in the air and we go, oh, and we swear and stuff, and we stomp around, but we don't break things. Yeah, if AJ smash, AJ smash. AJ big. AJ big and strong, thanks to Norwegian DNA. No AJ smash. AJ build. AJ don't break things, AJ build. Because AJ would have to build again. AJ has good value. AJ realizes things value. That's true. There's too much natural beauty here to get angry. You just look outside the window and go, oh well. Hey, at least I don't live somewhere else. Not Donald. Like, I'm just associating with Darkwing Duck with Donald Duck, with the whole duck thing in Disney. AJ Thunkerlock. Thanks, Jimmy. Hey, on that note, everybody, it's time for me to go yet again. Hey, Mason. Sorry for those of you who just got here, but I've been streaming for a while, and my back is actually pretty sore. I can't do a Donald Duck impression. I've tried. Adios, muchachos. Until next week. Or next weekend. Hopefully I'll come out with another video this week. Abdominal exercises to help with relief on pain in the back. I'll just basically carry on doing what I'm doing. I've had this sort of thing before and I know what fixes me. It's on the mend. I just, you know, it's not a good position to be leaning over like this and just sort of having restricted gestures and things. Plus, I've got other things to do. Drink mead and smash, yeah. Well, I've got to chop some stuff up with an electric chainsaw in between now and then. But I might have some mead later on this evening. Catch you later, everyone.